Tim, let's talk about this. Let's go through just some basic things people can look at to boost their credit score, because if they don't have a good credit score, they're going to pay more in interest, or they're going to get denied a loan. There's people with heirs out there. There's simple things that we could do, because the first time I learned about it, I was doing my radio show that I had way back in the day, and this guy Phil Tyrone's teaching me, and I'm texting my wife while I'm on the radio with all the tips, and we got, I think it was like 79-point increase over 30 days. So that's what I'm hoping to do, is jump your credit, improve your cash, and your overall finances.
Sure, first they got to understand how credit is actually calculated, what matters, what doesn't matter in your credit, and it doesn't make sense what matters and what doesn't matter. So what you have to understand, so 35% of your credit score is going to be based on utilization rates. So utilization rates are confusing for a lot of people, because they might say, well, I pay off my credit card every single month. And they're not worried about how much you pay off every single month. They're worried about, out of your available credit, how much are you using? So if you have a $10,000 credit limit on your card and you use $4,000 every single month, but you pay it off, if the credit card company checks in and they see the $4,000 balance, they're going to say you're using 40% of your credit. And there's two numbers to keep in mind. 30%, if you're using more than 30%, it's going to hurt you. If you get it down to about 10%, it's going to help you. So kind of in that range between 10 and 30, doesn't hurt, doesn't really help, but you're not going to get, it's not going to penalize you. Since it's worth 35% of your credit score, that's about 300 of the 850 points. So that's the first place to look, is where are your utilization rates at currently, and what can you do to improve those? So a couple ways to improve those. You can call the credit card company and say, I'd like you to give me a higher credit limit without pulling my credit score.
Just make sure you're not going to spend all that money.
Exactly. Don't spend it though, right? Yeah. You have to just get the limit.
Be disciplined enough not to go that far. Yeah.
Exactly. This show's for big boys and girls. Exactly. not for, exactly. Cool, that's free money.
I know. Yeah. Don't turn a $10,000 card into a $15,000 card and turn a $4,000 spending habit into a $9,000 spending habit, right? Yeah. So yeah, definitely you can do that. The other thing is, coming up into a loan, if they won't extend your credit, you can try paying off the card faster each month or earlier. So maybe you're making 2 payments a month instead of 1, or 4 payments a month instead of 1. It'll never let your balance get very high. And now your score can boost up, which might let you refinance something else to fix that money crunch and get that credit limit extended.
It's all about the utilization rate on your lines of credit. So a credit card is a line of credit, or a home equity line of credit. If you can keep these between 20 to 30% or paid off, it's going to make a massive difference. Now, one of the tricky things is you might go and charge a bunch on a credit card, but then pay it off at the end of the month. But if you want above 30% when you charge, and that's when they looked in to see what your credit score should be, they might lower it even though you never paid $1 of interest. So you got to watch how many you use at any time and make sure you pay those loans off. And even having 3 to 5 personal cards might be helpful in order to manage this. Now, for some of you, every time you have credit available to you, if you're reckless and you just go spend it, forget about it. Don't go get extra cards. If you're responsible and you can use this where you rotate them and you use it every now and again, and making sure you stay under 30% with your utilization rate, that is absolutely going to impact and improve your credit score. The utilization that she's talking of 7 to 10% means that on her lines of credit, which are typically credit cards, using only 10% of what's available. So if it's $10,000, using $1,000 or less. So when you stay under 20%, that's ideal, maybe even up to 30%. Mm-hmm. Having a few credit cards is great. I avoid department store cards because usually they have very limited amounts that you can get. You want the highest limits available for credit utilization and depth. Preferably don't use them at all if you have a hard time using them and end up owing money the next month. So this is kind of use and pay off, which not everybody does a good job with.
Yeah. So 30% of your credit score then will be based on your payment history. So have you missed any payments? And a couple guidelines to keep in mind. These are just basic guidelines, but if you have a 30-day late, it's going to hurt your credit score for about 9 months. So
that's a long period of time for one missed payment. People or one late payment
over that time.
Yeah,
that's true.
So if
gestation period.
And then if you're 60 days late, that can hurt your credit score for 2 to 3 years.
How many days late?
60.
Okay.
If you're 90 days late, that can actually affect your credit score negatively for 5 to 7 years.
Wow.
Because they show that if you're 90 days late, your chance of complete default is over 95%. So they look at that as kind of the worst level. If you're 90 days late, it's pretty bad. So if you're going to be late on a payment, call the creditor before you're late. Let them know the situation, try and work out something that you can do to kind of stop that. That's 30% of your credit is whether or not you've ever paid late. Mm-hmm. If you've paid late and you honestly paid late, it's going to take some time to get that cleaned up.
There's certain basics. Obviously, if you can pay on time, that's going to help out your credit score, but it's only part of it.
The second biggest area is on our payment history. Do we pay on time? That's 30% of our score. And so those two areas alone, out of the 5 different criteria, are 65% of the total credit score.
Limit your inquiries. So there's hard inquiries and soft inquiries. Soft is you're looking at your credit. No problem. You can do that as often. She mentioned Credit Karma. Hard inquiry is someone else is looking at your credit to get a car, a bank account, or something like that. You want to limit those. What's another way that you can boost that credit score? You limit your hard inquiries. So there's a hard inquiries when other people are checking your credit. Like when I was a kid. And I say kid, this was like 20 years ago. I went to buy a car. I looked like this, but instead of having gray hair, it was more like bleach blonde with some hoop earrings. So I definitely didn't look like I could afford the Lexus that I was looking at, or I think an Infiniti is another car I looked at, or some other, like of the little bit higher end models. And every place I went to checked my credit. Every time they checked my credit, there were so many credit checks, it dipped my score down. Now, if you want to look at your credit score and use credit monitoring, you can do that all day long. You could be obsessive compulsive. You could be checking it on the hour, every hour, and it doesn't lower your score because that's a soft inquiry. Hard inquiries where other people go look at. So let's say that you're going to get multiple credit cards based upon the last point. Make sure you get them all in the same day so it looks like one inquiry versus multiple inquiries over months. Or let's say you want to go get a bank account and it's another account at a bank you're already operating at. They might normally check your credit, but if you say, I already have a relationship here, can you do this without the credit check? You've limited the hard inquiries and therefore boosted and kept your credit score up. As a matter of fact, if you do this more than once a year as far as getting a hard inquiry, that can start to lower your credit score. And one simple point matters. If you have a 719 credit score versus a 720, and you went to get an FHA loan for a $200,000 property, you'd have to pay $6,000 in extra closing cost to buy the same rate as someone with a 720 if you're at 719. So 1 point makes a huge difference.
Then there's inquiries, which is the number of times a creditor pulls your credit. So someone that's investigating you on whether or not they're going to give you a loan, if they pull your credit, that's a bad thing for you.
Yeah, that's known as a hard inquiry when they do it. When you do it, it's a soft inquiry, meaning you're going to Credit Karma or Annual Credit Report or some service like that, and you're checking your credit score. You can do that obsessively, compulsively, and be fine.
You have 10% of your credit score is going to be based on inquiries. So how many times does a creditor pull your credit to see if they can give you more credit or a new loan, right? So just keep those to a minimum. Don't let anyone pull your credit. You'll walk into different stores, different car dealerships, they'll pull your credit so fast, it's crazy. So,
especially when you were me in my 20s. Yeah. And I was in my Kurt Cobain phase. Long hair still.
I would have liked to have known you then.
Hoop earrings. Bleach blonde hair.
It was a great phase. It was amazing.
Yeah, you knew each other
this
then.
This guy can't afford a car.
We got to find some pictures from back then. I got to see this.
Probably some floating around, I'm sure. And so, keep those to a minimum, right? Only let someone pull your credit if you're really going to seriously get that loan. Otherwise, tell them you can't pull my credit. We want to stick mostly to one hard inquiry a year if we can. So try and plan that out. They do give us some shopping windows on inquiries. So if I'm shopping for a mortgage, I can go out and actually have like 3 different lenders pull my credit within a 30-day window and have it only count as one inquiry.
Right.
So just try and plan that out
like
a little bit.
If you want to apply for multiple credit cards, because somewhere between 3 to 5 credit cards can actually help you optimize your score. You could apply for all those in the same day.
Absolutely.
And only show us one inquiry.
Yep. Yeah. And I think they give us about a two-week window for car loans and credit cards.
Yeah.
Where we can say, hey, these are all just one, right? So that's something to keep in mind, and that'll really help out on the 3 to 5 credit cards, jumping back to the utilization rate.
Well, and even like when I open up a bank account, I open it up at the bank I'm already dealing with, so all the time I'll say, hey, can we get this account without pulling my credit because I have a history here, and they say yes, and they do that. So you could be deliberate and mindful about that. And if I haven't got a loan for a car for a long time, but if I were, I always go in and say, hey, let's just assume I'm paying cash. Like, I don't want them pulling anything or looking at any report without my permission.
Yeah, and I usually clarify that up front with them. I just walk in, you do not have permission to pull my credit yet, and then go through the negotiation process and say, based on me having this credit score, what would this look like? And then when I'm ready to do the loan, let them pull it because they're going to need it for their file.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you mentioned, they're so fast at pulling your credit. As soon as they start,
like 10% of your overall score is inquiries.
10%
right?
is inquiries, so it's not a huge impact.
It's not the biggest thing,
but it can hurt.
Now, one of the things you can do is every 6 to 12 months, if you have a good credit score, you can ask for an increase on your lines of credit. The more that's available to you, the better it's going to be. And so, my friend, You know, when he went and he had this client with a multi-million dollar net worth and plenty of cash and wanted to buy this home, he got denied because he never utilized any credit at all for over a decade. He had no credit cards, he had no car loans, he didn't want to pay any interest, but there's a difference between having credit and paying interest. What he did in order to be able to finance that home is he went and refinanced a car that was paid off, made payments on it for a few months, and that gave him some credit depth, and then he was able to go and finance that home so he didn't have to tie up all of his cash.
The utilization rate is the biggest impact. That's going to be the first area we're going to go to improve our credit score. So what utilization rate is how much total credit is available to us. So I might have 5 credit cards, $10,000 of limit on each card. That's a total of $50,000 of credit I can go out and borrow on those cards. If I'm using above 30% of that credit every month consistently, even if I pay the balance to 0, but I'm using more than $15,000.
It's when they look in.
It's when they look in. Then that hurts me.
Right.
And then the lower I go, the more it helps me. So myfico.com did a study about 2 years ago now, and they said that the average for people who had the highest credit score of 780 or above, the average lender or borrower actually had between around 8 to 10% of a utilization rate. So they found that if you got the utilization rate below 30, it actually could improve your score.
Which is having maybe a few more cards, avoiding department store cards that don't give you a lot of balance or availability, and then every so often increasing what's available to you. I just had Chase say to me, hey, we're willing to do a no inquiry potential increase. You just have to go here by this date. And so I'll plan on doing that later today, just going on, seeing if I can get that increase, because the more that's available to me, the better I look as a borrower.
And people don't really realize you can always ask for it too. You don't have to wait for them to approach you. You can call them up. Once again, as we talked in an earlier video on credit,
Yeah.
right, and credit cards, and we said call or to renegotiate your loans. Well, you can do the same thing on the credit limit. Call the credit card companies. Don't speak to the first person that answers. They don't have the ability to make anything, and say, I want you to increase my credit limit without pulling my credit score.
Yeah.
And you'd be shocked how often they'll do that for you.
It's more than paying your bills on time. It's having the right loans. One of the loans that's the right loan is an installment loan versus a line of credit. The types of installment loans matter. So you want to make sure that you have like an installment loan like a car loan or a signature loan, something that has a fixed period of time of payment, a little bit shorter, and that you can't just rack right back up like a credit card. If you're paying those on time or pay those off, that is going to boost your credit score.
Then we've got things like credit blend. Do we have different types of loans? So do we have an installment loan? Do we have a mortgage? Do we have...
Installment loan would be like a car loan or a signature loan on like maybe even a piece of jewelry that has a finite period of time that you pay back that you can't just go borrow more at any time.
Yep.
Revolving loans would be like a line of credit against a home or a credit card where you can pay it down and charge it back up.
Yep, and they want to see that you have different types of credit so you can use different types of credit appropriately.
An installment loan can actually help your credit score. An installment loan is like a car loan. If you're paying it on time, it's a fixed period of time. By actually having one, you can boost your credit score.
And then you've got a few other categories. There's credit blend. So do you have multiple types of credit? So like a revolving line, an installment loan, that kind of thing will influence your credit score at about 15%, I believe, for that one.
Over a lifetime, 83% of people are going to have an error in their credit report, right? So that's the fourth thing. You've got to check for errors and correct them. What are some of the common errors? Maybe they've got your middle name first. Maybe they've got the wrong address on one of the bureaus because you're looking at Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. You want to look at all three. Maybe something's showing up on your credit on one report that's not there on another. And one of the sneaky things is this utilization rate we talked about before of you have $10,000 limit available on a credit card, but you charge $2,000, you've only used 20%. You've only utilized 20% of what's available. But if they don't report your total available balance, it might look like you're maxed out at $2,000. You've got to make sure your available limits are being reported properly. So make sure everything on your credit's yours. If you're a junior or a third and you've got the same name as other people in your family, or you just have one of the most common names out there in the world, likelihood is you've got other people's information on your credit report. You want to debate that, but do not debate more than 3 things at a time. That can be seen as frivolous and actually harm your credit score. As you do that, you may get certified mail and send that. They're going to give you phone numbers and addresses when you pull your credit reports. You might go to myfico.com. There's plenty of free services that you can use once a year and then maybe get a more premium version of that. But make sure you're looking at your credit and you know what's going on. Now, there could be difficult items. Those difficult items, you might even have to hire an attorney or a law firm that supports you with disputing them. Because if you aren't getting any traction, there are firms that specifically deal in that. One of the tricky things is you might have something way back in the day. Maybe this is when you were in school or before you were married or whatever it is. We have all different types of situations watching here, but maybe that you have this bill that didn't get paid for whatever reason. If you go pay that off right now, that could actually harm your credit score. So before you pay anything that was past due, make sure to get a letter of deletion that doesn't bring it current, it just removes it. Okay, so that's really critical.
But I would say check for errors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the other thing, because if any of those areas have an error in them, it's negatively impacting your score.
Yeah, if you're Amanda Stolba Jr., then you probably have Amanda Stolba Sr. stuff show up on your credit.
Yeah.
You know, if you're Timothy Carden the 7th, then you might have something from the 6th or the 5th that shows up. Those are very common.
Yep.
But also, you know, just I've had credit lines on one of my, you know, bureaus that's not on the other two.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, that's one of the things you can look for and go, or a different address because you've updated your address, which one of the tricks is just always have a P.O. box. So even if you move, it's not being switched all the time. And you can always forward things.
So when people are looking to review like errors on their credit reports, is that something that they should do annually? Like pull from all three companies and do it once a year, or how frequently?
Yeah, I think you need to keep an eye at least on your credit score somewhat regularly, because if you notice that it's not where it should be, then you need to be pulling the report to see what's going on.
When you're over 800, who cares? Yeah. Just brag. Just tell people I'm over 800. Errors really hurt your credit score. So eliminate errors any chance you can. So you want to write in, you know, certified mail, just look at your credit reports. Is there something that doesn't belong to you? Are they not reporting what your limits really are? So it looks like you've maxed those out. Those are just a few of the kind of components that way.
Okay, so here's the thing you got to watch for, because there's a lot of errors, and errors have a big impact on your credit. If they don't show what's available to you on your lines of credit or your credit cards, and you go charge $2,000 and it should be you're only at 20% utilization, 80% unutilized, it might look like you're maxed out because they're not reporting that limit. That's one of the sneaky things to look for on the error side.
Absolutely, and you get to dispute that. And when you dispute that, just keep one other thing in mind on disputes. If you do the online disputes, which is really common, they'll say, hey, if you want to dispute, click here. And then there's that I agree to these terms and conditions thing that none of us ever read because it would take our entire life to read it. When you click I agree, you typically are giving away some of your rights that you get through the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So I'd recommend, especially on the important things that are really going to have a big impact on your score, going the old-fashioned way and actually writing the letter and sending it through snail mail.
Certified mail. Certified. And don't debate more than 3 things at a time. It's then seen as frivolous.
Once someone identifies that they do have an error, what do they do about it?
Okay, a couple things to keep in mind. If it's a minor error, then you can go ahead and click on the thing on the computer to make your dispute. If it's a pretty significant error, what you have to keep in mind is when you click I want to dispute online, they're going to make you agree to their terms and conditions. Usually when you agree to their terms and conditions, you're giving up some of your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act.
Read the fine print, people.
Don't read the fine print, just don't do it.
Okay.
You can read the fine print, it just takes hours, right? It's always like this huge thing that no one reads, they just click it. So just keep that in mind. When you need to dispute something, don't just do the online dispute. A lot of times you give up your rights, you don't want to do that. So instead, you're going to have to do the snail mail situation, right? You're going to
certified.
Certified letter.
Okay.
A lot of times it's important to get certified plus a return receipt.
No more than 3 things disputed at a time.
Yes. Yep. You dispute more than 3 at a time.
You're frivolous.
Is it common to have more than 3 mistakes?
It can be. Usually they're minor. So there might be a couple major mistakes. And then the other ones will be like incorrect addresses. That doesn't hurt really bad. It does make you look transient to a lender. So that could be concerning. So you want to fix it. But if you've got 2 pretty important errors and
Fix
then
those first.
Fix those first, then worry about incorrect names or incorrect addresses or things like that.
Errors on your credit report are going to impact you. So that could be everything from your name being spelled wrong, to your address being different from one bureau to the next, to having things on your credit that aren't actually yours, or having past things that didn't get paid because maybe you didn't transfer the utilities or cancel them when you moved out. I mean, this is clear back from when you're in college, depending on your age. So you want to look for those errors and never debate more than 3 at a time. If you debate more than 3 at a time, it can be seen as frivolous. And when you do debate those errors, make sure you're using certified mail, or if you're going into the credit services, which, you know, there's myfico.com annual credit report, free credit report, Credit Karma. There's plenty of services out there to check on your credit. Make sure you're looking at all three bureaus. Look for those errors. Don't go for more than 3 at any given time, and make sure to correct those errors over time. These are some of those things that can really help and boost your credit score.
They say that credit fraud is the fastest growing reported crime. And they always say reported crime because what they found is it's usually not actual credit fraud. It's usually them combining your record with someone else's.
So it's an error.
It's an error from the bureau or the algorithm, right? Mm-hmm. When they go in to pull your credit and you say, hey, I want my credit today, the algorithm or the computer program goes in and says, this isn't Garrett, this isn't Garrett, this isn't Garrett, and what's left is what they can't prove isn't you. So if you have someone with similar addresses, similar names, similar birth date, similar social security number, 5 digits that are similar, even out of order, can sometimes trigger this to happen to you. So sometimes you'll see something like, oh man, this guy opened a card in my name, and what happened was he didn't open a card in your name. They just couldn't prove that that person wasn't you, and so they combined it with yours.
Right.
So you'll see that, and you can dispute that as well.
And you're almost certain to have an error on your report if you have the same name as someone else in your family. You're a junior, a third, or anything like that. A lot of times those things will get merged. So you want to look and see, is your name accurate across all 3 bureaus? Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. So when you're looking at this, at least annually, then you're looking at, do they have the right address? Because these kind of things matter, and one measly point can be a big difference when you're getting a mortgage. The 5th piece is what I call the 3 R's, and this brings a lot of this together. You can restructure loans, right? You could reallocate loans, and you can also renegotiate your loans. So let's talk about restructuring loans. Let's say you have a credit card, but then you have a paid off car. You could refinance the car, get an installment loan, which is great for your credit, lower your interest rates as well, and now all of a sudden have a lower payment, better interest rates, and boost your score. That would be a restructure. Or maybe you refinance your home. And when you refinance your home, you can get an even lower interest rate right now than you're paying before. That would be one way to restructure. Or renegotiate. If you have a credit card and you call up the company and say, you know what, I want to cancel, or do you have any specials or deals? If you get past that door, that gatekeeper, and get to the retention department, a lot of times they'll just lower your interest rate. That is, do you have good credit? Do you have good collateral with the loans? Do you have good connections for the right institutions? Or do you have the right cash flow reporting? Those 4 C's can really help out here as well.